Hello and welcome to another video. This is Gina from McGuire. So a few months ago, I shared how to use your background dyes to create see-through cards. Well, I thought I would change that up a little bit and this time show you how to create see-through cards using stamped images. So if you look closely at these cards, you can actually see through the flowers to the card inside. So the front panel is see-through. This works great with almost any stamps that you may have, and today I'll be using lots of florals. So let's start with this card example. This stamp set has large images, which are great for this card design. This is the Altenew Beautiful Heart stamp set. I like that it includes the layering images and the outline. You can use them separately or together, and I'll be using them together. Now I'm using my MISTI stamping tool simply because I'm going to make a bunch of the same image, but you can use an acrylic block if you want. So I have my first layer of the large flower. I'm stamping this with Altenew Artic Ink, which is a light blue color. And I'll stamp 3 or 4 of these. So I have some white cardstock pieces already cut, and I'll just put each piece into my MISTI and stamp each one. So you can see here why a stamping tool is a big time saver. Now it's time to grab the next layer of this flower, and I'll place that into my MISTI. The nice thing about the MISTI is now that it's positioned perfectly in the first one, I can stamp all of the other flowers very quickly. This time I'm using Altenew Caribbean Sky Ink. The final layer of this flower is the outline image, and for this one I'm using the next darkest color. This is the Altenew Persian blue, which is a beautiful bright blue ink color. After I've finished all of my flowers, I will also stamp a bunch of leaves. For the leaves, I used frayed leaf, forest glades, and moss colors of Altenew ink. And these again layer beautifully and go nicely with the flowers that we created. Next, I'm using the coordinating dies to die cut out all of the flowers and leaves. Coordinating dies are helpful for today's technique since there's so much to cut out, but you could definitely do fussy cutting if you don't have the coordinating dies. After I've taped my dies in place, I just run it through any die cut machine and cut them, and I'll do that with all the flowers and leaves. Okay, so now it's time to arrange these to make the front of our card panel. I have a piece of white 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch cardstock here that I'm just using as a guide. So I'm not gluing anything to it, it's just a guide. Now I'm arranging the flowers and leaves to cover the front of this, leaving some openings between the pieces, but I want the pieces to overlap. I also want to make sure that there is a piece at each corner, so we have a defined corner or edge to the front of our card. Again, make sure you do lots of overlapping. We're going to end up gluing these together where they overlap, so the entire front of our card is only held together by the overlapping stamped pieces. So you can see here there are little openings, but we really are covering a lot of the space so that the front of our card is strong enough. So now I have all of these arranged, covering a lot of that white cardstock guide that we have in the background. Next, I'm going to take a piece of Glad Press and Seal. This is a great product because when you press down on it, it sticks. So we can press this down on top of all of our stamped images and hold them together temporarily. I have a video that I posted in the past where a guest, my friend Lori Willison, showed how you can use press and seal for a similar technique, and I'll link to it here if you haven't seen it. If you don't have press and seal, you could also use masking paper to temporarily hold these together, but I do feel that the press and seal is better because it's see-through. So once you have it all pressed down, you want to press and make sure you're picking up everything at once. You can flip it over and use scissors to cut away all of the stamped images that are hanging off of that white guide. So the only thing holding these all together right now is the press and seal. Again, when you lay the press and seal down onto it, all you do is press it down and it'll stick there temporarily. So I'm just going around and cutting the excess off all of the edges, and you can reuse this piece of press and seal again if you want to. Okay, so now that we have all of that cut down, we can just lift the press and seal and we'll have all of the stamped images connected to it. And we can remove our white guide. That guide was just there to help us get the sizing right. Now looking from the back, I take a strong liquid adhesive. You want something super strong. I'm using Gina Connect glue. And I'm putting glue anywhere these images overlap. So you can see when a leaf overlaps a flower, I put a little bit of glue. You don't need a lot. You just want to make sure you press down until it's dry. It doesn't take too long to dry. And make sure you put adhesive anywhere these overlap. The more that you are careful to make sure you put adhesive wherever it overlaps, the better your chances your card front will hold together. Okay, so once I put adhesive in all of the overlapping spots, I give it a few minutes to dry and press it down. Once that's dry, I can go ahead and remove the press and seal from all of those pieces, and we'll end up with one piece where all of the elements are connected. Now you can bend it around and play with it a bit and make sure that you didn't miss any overlaps. I notice I missed one here, so I'm going back and adding some more glue there. Okay, now it's time to turn this into a card front. So I decided I wanted to trim this down a bit so that the final size of this is 4 by 5 1/4. And you can see I can cut this very easily since they're all glued together. Next, we're going to do a little score line at the top of this. This will allow it to open like a card. I'm using a scoreboard and my Teflon bone folder, and about 1/4 of an inch from the top of my panel, I'm doing a score line. Now I'm going to flip this over and reinforce it a few times, just because I'm scoring through a few layers because the images overlap in certain spots. And you really want to make sure you have a good score line there before you try to fold it. If you do not have a scoreboard, you can use the ledge in your trimmer, which I'll show you on my next example. Okay, once you have that scored well, you can go ahead and reinforce that fold line with the other end of your bone folder. And this little flap here will end up being our little hinge for our card front. So now I'll flip this over and put some strong liquid adhesive just on that little flap, just on the back of the flap. Then I'll glue this on to a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch light blue piece of cardstock. So this piece is going to be slightly bigger than the card front, so there's a little trim around the edge, and I just thought that looked nice. I'll make sure to press down on the top there so that that dries nice and secure. I used the Altenew Simply Hello die to die cut 3 hellos from dark blue cardstock. I glued those on top of each other with the Connect glue, so I have a nice stacked die cut with lots of dimension. I used the same glue to add the hello to the front of our card. And you'll see that I can open my card nicely, and you can see through parts of the front of the card, which is a really fun design. However, I need to be able to create a spot where I can write my sentiment on the inside, but not have it show through to the front. For this design, I decided to add a circle to the back. So I'm adding a circle right onto the inside of the front panel. And then I will add another circle to the inside of the card where I can write my message. So I'm taking another white circle, putting glue on it, lining it up with the other one that we've already glued inside. The glue is face up right now. Line it up and then close my card onto it. Sorry, my head gets in the way there. And that circle is positioned right behind the one in the front. That way we block through so that I can write a message on that circle. But there are still some see-through elements on other parts of the front of the card panel. I also add a little sentiment strip to the front by white heat embossing on a piece of blue cardstock. And that sentiment is from the new Altenew Needlework Motif stamp set. If you look closely, there are lots of great small sentiments in here that are perfect for stamping on sentiment strips to add to cards. I'll also be using that stamp set on our next example. That's this one that we're going to do now. You can see how that front is really cool using those stamps, and there's lots of see-through areas. Again, I'm using my MISTI just to save some time, stamping onto white cardstock these 2 large images. Again, the larger the image, the less time you have to take to stamp and die cut a bunch of pieces to cover the front of your card. I'm stamping this with black ink, and then I'll just quickly color them in with Copic markers. You definitely do not need to use Copic markers. I did not do blending for this. I just colored the areas in with different colors of blue and green markers. You could use any markers or colored pencils that you want. Once I did my quick coloring, I used the coordinating dies to die cut out the 2 images. I again have a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch piece of cardstock on my desk that I can use as a guide. And I'm going to try to cover the front of that with as much of these images as I can. Make sure that you have some large images at the corners and along the top, especially along the top because that's where our hinge will be. Remember how we scored? You need to have enough up there to be able to create that hinge or that little score line. Also, be sure to overlap as much as you can. The more you overlap, the more connected the front will be. So there I have my front panel pretty much covered. I will add a little bit later on, but we're at a good place to press our press and seal on top. Make sure you rub your finger along it so that it all sticks. Flip it over, cut the excess that's hanging off of the edge of our guide, and then you can take a look at your card front and see what it looks like. I decided I wanted a few little pieces here and there along the edge to make the edges stronger. So some of those pieces that I cut off when I trim the edges, I'm just taking and adding into some of the open areas. I even went back and added another little blue flower. I felt like this opening was too big here. And all of those overlapped areas will help to hold our card together. Okay, so once I have that all done, I can go ahead and remove the front from our little white cardstock guide. And you'll see all the pieces are connected nicely thanks to that press and seal. Again, if you don't have press and seal, you could use any kind of masking tape or paper, but I do believe that clear press and seal is handy to use. Press and seal is different than saran wrap because it's not sticky until you press it down, so that's ideal for this. Going through and adding my liquid adhesive to any of the areas that overlap. Even if you don't think the overlapped area needs glue, I think it's best to put it there. And once it's dry, you can remove the press and seal piece and save it for another card. And there we have a really see-through card front panel. I think this is going to be really cool as a card because there are so many open areas. This time I'm using the ledge of my paper trimmer as a spot to score, so you can score however you want, about 1/4 inch from the top. And then I will reinforce that little score line. Again, this will be the hinge on our card. You can see it's kind of dainty, but that's okay. As long as you have enough material there to add some glue to, you should be fine. I did forget to mention that before scoring it, I trimmed this front piece down to 4 by 5 1/4. I put some glue on the back of the little hinge and added it to a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch white cardstock panel. Now for this card design, I decided to put a little mini card inside so I can hide my personal message. So I put glue on the back of that, and I'll glue it right into the inside of the card. So we actually have a card inside of a card, and that allows the front panel to still be see-through when you open it up. To finish off this card, I added a stacked hello die cut just as I did before, and a white heat embossed sentiment strip. And I also stamped a sentiment on the inside of the card too. Now these sentiments are from the new Altenew Kind Words stamp set. There are lots of great sentiments on here. I used the ones on the bottom there that are split into 2, which is great because you can put one on the front and one on the inside. The other sentiments would work great on the front of the card or on the inside. I know many people ask about inside messages a lot, and this has a lot of great encouragement ones. Okay, at this point, I decided that my hello was getting a little bit lost in the busy background. So I decided to do something to make it stand out more, and that's to add a clear coating to it. The shine really draws attention to it and also some dimension. I used my Ranger Glossy accents for this, but you could use any kind of clear product or even a few layers of clear embossing. Here you can see the shine that you get, and it darkens it so it makes it stand out more. Okay, my third and final example is probably my favorite because these stamped images are just absolutely stunning. I used this new Altenew Build-A-Flower stamp set. Now the Build-A-Flower sets from Altenew are sold with the stamp set and the dies. You can only buy them together. And you can see there's a great stamping guide on the back of this. These images are super simple to line up, but there are lots of different layers so you get the most colorful, beautiful image when you're done. And you can use lots of different color combos to create different color lilies. Now to save time, I'm not going to show the stamping of all the layers, but I did want to show you what inks I use, so I'll list them at the top there. And I did want to show that I did one stamped flower on one side of my cardstock, rotate it, and stamped another on the other side. That's a huge time saver when you're using a stamping tool. I did a few more layers, and then I like that on this flower, the inside are different images, different stamps. So you can do the inside a different color. So I have a two-tone flower here, peach on the outside and yellows on the inside. And look at the details that you get with these layering images. So beautiful, and it doesn't take much effort to line up. I also created some leaves using the same green colors I used on my first card. So again, I have my guide in the background. I'm lining up all of my flowers, making sure that they overlap nicely, putting the press and seal on top, pressing it all over to make sure we catch them all, flip it over, trim off all of the excess, and then flip it back over and make sure that we're happy with our card front. I did decide there were some openings, so I used my leftover little bits to add into the side, and then removed our backing. So there we have our card front. I'll trim that extra off in a bit. I'll use lots of my strong liquid adhesive to connect this. Again, don't use a wimpy adhesive. You got to use something strong here so the front of our card stays put together. I trimmed that down to 4 by 5 1/4, adding a score line there about 1/4 inch from the top. I'll fold that over, and then I'll put some strong liquid adhesive on the back of that little flap, and we'll glue that down onto a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch white piece of cardstock. Now this card is my favorite because there are large openings, so it's very clearly see-through from the front. And I again added a mini card to the inside so we could keep that front see-through without having to see our sentiment on the inside. Now to the front of this, I added a simple white heat embossed sentiment that I matted. Now this is from the new Altenew Life is Awesome stamp set. This is a large 6x8 stamp set, you can see it to the right there, with great layering images. You could create all different types of layering flowers and create a card front from that stamp set too. There you have it, some ways you can create see-through cards. I hope you'll give this a try. I linked the supplies in that YouTube description below. In the middle are a couple other videos that I encourage you to check out. Thanks for spending time with me. Have a great day, and we'll see you soon.